Assalamualaikum everyone. My name is Muneeb and I am currently the marketing and communications lead for Formula Electric Racing NUST. Before we start off with the entire session, quick few pointers. In case you have any questions, just during the session, just write them down on the chat, and by the end, we will discuss the questions, and Dr. Naweed will answer your questions as well. So, firstly, let us start off with a few of our intros. Formula Electric Racing NUST, we are Pakistan's first and only fully electric vehicle manufacturers. We are in fact the pioneers of electric vehicles in Pakistan, and we are also known for international participation and being the only electric vehicle participation in IMEC Formula Student 2018 as well as 2020 and inshallah in 2021 as well. And for the campaign that we are currently pursuing, it's called FERN Talks. This is basically a campaign where we want to provide our platform to discuss to have healthy discussions on certain topics on the trending topics and with the experts obviously. And each month we will have a different topic and different speakers. So for this month we have a topic, innovative minds, and we have none other than Dr. Naweed Syed with us. Before I start, let us just discuss the topic at hand. So, it is often said that there is no scientific study that more vital to man than the study of his own brain, as the entire view of universe depends on it. The sheer complexity of brain itself poses a myriad of challenges for scientists around the globe, and one such challenge is obviously communication with our brain cells. So our today's speaker has made a huge breakthrough in this regard, and he has held the honor of being the first scientist to connect brain cells to a silicon chip, creating the world's first Neurochip. He is currently a professor at the Cumming School of Medicine, University of Calgary, and he has also been awarded with numerous awards such as Tamga Imtiaz, Medal of Excellence by the Government of Pakistan, and Canada 150 Medal by the Canadian State. Uh, so I think that sir, आपका जो भी intro है आप बता दें, and let us start off with the session.
I think we should get started. First of all, and Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Assalamu alaikum to everyone. I am really excited and thankful to Muneeb for the invite. And also, I think Nabi Bucks for really keeping me sort of on the target or on the schedule. So I'm really grateful. You know, what an honor and privilege it is to be able to really talk some of the brightest minds in our country. I think, you know, you are the smartest generation. You're sharp, you're clever, you are very insightful, you're thoughtful, you're very collaborative, you're very resourceful. You don't even actually go to library. Library comes to your handheld device. And so, you know, the world is under your palm. But with all of these blessings that also, mashallah, you live in the best country in the world. There's no question. Allah has bestowed so many blessings to this country, from Himalayas touching, and the skies to deserts to fertile land. You know, I travel around the world. In most places, even in Europe, like in Holland, you cannot grow onions 2 times, in consecutive years because they suck up the soil's, minerals and the actual all the fertilizers. But in Pakistan, there's before one crop is cut, the other one is grown right up. Your dirt, dirt in Pakistan, the soil, it really spits out gold. Your Anwar Ritol mangoes, you can't even hide one in your house. And then your flowers are the most beautiful, and your fruits are the tastiest around the world. So with all of this blessing, you now have the opportunity, and you will be held accountable for all of this. You are the game changers, and inshallah, you will change the game, and you will change the world forever. So what I'm going to do today, if I could share my my slide. What do I do? My research is really focused on figuring out how this squishy stuff that you in Pakistan call katakat or takatak, whatever it is, brain masala. This is, the idea is to figure out how it works. And even more importantly, how to fix it if things go wrong. So if you get damage either due to stroke, trauma, injury, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, when things go wrong, because natural replacement of damaged brain tissue doesn't take place, how do you repair it? And that is actually a billion-dollar question that we, try to pursue. And this is what I will walk you through, as to how we have been able to tap into information processing capabilities of the brain to be able to figure out, A, how it functions, all of those aspects, so we understand complex functions. Also, if we are ever to make brain control prosthetic devices, or even to get closer to the super AI that we have been thinking about. So this is squishy stuff. It actually has tens of billions of brain cells, and each and every brain cell is just as complex. More brain cells than there are stars in the Milky Way. Synaptic connections are in trillions, and it is really an enigma. It is an absolutely incredible. So, if you divide brain simply in two parts, one is the conscious, the other is unconscious. The conscious part of your brain scans 42 frames per second, whereas the unconscious part of your brain actually scans close to 1.2 million frames. So up until now, you did not know where your foot was. But when I reminded you, you thought of your foot and you started to wiggle. Oh, it's still here. Kahin bhag nahi gaya. So, the important thing to remember is that the unconscious part of the brain is also a huge mystery that we do not know. And I can tell you, if we can crack into it, we can break that code, we can design, artificial intelligent devices, super AI, or robots that will have not only the capabilities of the information processing mechanisms of our brain, but we will also be able to provide them with conscious. Hopefully I will get the time to get to it. If not, maybe the next time we could really dabble into that aspect. So why this session? I think, there are a couple of things that my job is to make you uncomfortable, because I think you are the pride of the nation, and you are our enormous asset of humanity. You are the one who will eventually go to change the world, and you are the one who will actually make life better. So I would like to really take this session into maybe 3 different parts, and then remind you there are lives that belong to whole community. And as long as we live, it is our privilege to do whatever we can to raise the tide, not just our own boat, but raise the tide so that all boats can come up. No, we want to be thoroughly used up when we die. I have never seen anyone die of hard work. I have seen people who rust out. So, the first part of my talk will be to help you really develop your personal growth. And I will then give you some examples, my personal examples, what really propelled me to get out of the country and do what I really wanted to do. So, but you also have to remember is that you could be as smart as you are, but none of us is or are as smart as all of us. So it's really important that you guys, and I'm very happy that you work as a team to solve the world problems together. So I think when we put our resources together, we are much smarter than an individual. So then in the second part, I'll talk about, you need to really get the right people around the table. So you have to hang out with, people who are really close to, as I always say, that you are really the sum of 5 people that you hang around with. So those 5 people are the ones that you are the sum of. So surround yourself really with smart people. And I also tell people that if you are the smartest person in that room, then actually you are in the wrong room. So you need to be able to make sure that for personal growth, you grow along with other people around you. So surround yourself with smart people. And then really the purpose is service to society. to make life better for humanity, because service is the rent that we pay for the privilege of being part of a society or a community. So at the end of the day, what you need to be able to really think is that whatever I am going to do will be for the betterment of humanity and not just for myself. So, the purpose of life, as I always define, is a life lived with a purpose. And that purpose has already been defined for you, and that is to seek knowledge. Nowhere in Quran, Muslim word or is defined, but service to humanity. And Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he said that, when you go in search of knowledge, the angels spread their wings underneath your feet, and the fish down in the bottom of the ocean, 7 miles down the ocean, and birds in the sky, they ask for your salvation and your forgiveness. And so there are so many important things that we have been asked in to really think and ponder. I always remind people that don't look for science in Quran, look for signs in Quran, because it is the signs that also drive the science. So it's important thing is that we need to take our faith together, and this is what we have been told time and again, that your knowledge and wisdom is the asset, is the most important thing that makes you superior to angels. So really the purpose of life is to live a life with a purpose. And so this is something really important, that it is your religious and and moral obligation, as well as your country's duty, to be able to seek knowledge so you can use this knowledge to make lives better for other people. So, but many a times now that we are at the stage of life, we look back and we ask the question, and now, I have graduated over 70 PhD students. When I think back and I ask myself, what is that the academia is supposed to prepare me for? Actually, it is not supposed to prepare you for Faculty of Engineering, Faculty of Medicine, Faculty of Humanity, Life Sciences, and etc. It is actually supposed to prepare you for Faculty of Life. And if your education does not prepare you for this, there is no point in studying. If you are not complete, if you think you are not complete without a PhD or an MD or a B engineering degree, you will never be complete with it. And this is something that to really keep in your mind. I always tell our medical students that, look, Prophet Isa or Jesus never went to medical school. He could still heal and cure. It's not the MD degree. It's actually passion and compassion. So the purpose of your academia is not to really make money. That's something that's really important. But if it does not provide you intellectual enlightenment, that education is nothing but a piece of paper that you should rip it apart. Not everyone among us could be a rocket scientist, Formula 2 racer, or be really qualifies to go to Harvard. That's okay. But everyone among us is capable of becoming an honest and a decent human being. And I think if your academia does not provide you this kind of education where you have aapke paas ikhlaqiyat, moralities, and if you don't actually have the perception other than yourself, then your education, you have wasted the money altogether. So I also tell people that if you don't study and work, for the love of knowledge or for the love of work, but only for money, it is highly unlikely that you will make any money or find any fun in life. And I can guarantee you from all the experiences that I personally have and the people around me, that if you studied or if you did a job or if you went after something for the sake of money, I can tell you that you will never gain the knowledge, which is the true, pure knowledge, nor will you have money out of that work. You may have short success, short-term success, but it will take away your happiness and satisfaction. So I also tell, do each thing as if you do nothing else. So, if you are thinking about multitasking 50 million things, it is impossible for humans to multitask. whenever you're multitasking, the focus, even if it's 1 or 2 or 3%, is taken away of your brain power to focus on something else. And this causes the disruption in your learning and your memory. So whenever you are doing something, just do it as if this is the only thing you do. I always remind our youngsters that if you wish to make your dreams come true, the most important thing is actually to wake up and wake up to the reality and realize what your role in this world is, notwithstanding all this blessing that Allah has bestowed upon you, where you don't have to worry about, going and picking your meal in the garbage like most other people do, work in the coal minds to make. Alhamdulillah, the important thing to remember is that the principles that your education system and your family life will teach you, not just values. Even criminals and thugs and thieves, will have values, and those values are, don't do drugs in my neighborhood. Don't steal this thing from my neighborhood. Don't send your beggars into my neighborhood, because this is my territory. Those are the values, but they are not principally driven, because even thieves will have values, but they are not driven by principles. So remember that principles are like laws of nature. When you pick up one end of the stick, you pick up both ends of the stick. And if you jump from a 10-story building, halfway through you cannot change your mind, because gravity takes over. So this is something important that your education system should instill in you, certain set principles that no matter where you go, you're competing in Harvard, you're competing in London, you're competing in Singapore, wherever you go, you take those principal values and treat those countries and people the way you would have liked yourself treated. So keep your mind open to change all the time. You should welcome a change, court it. It's only by examining and re-examining your opinions and ideas that you can actually progress. So this is something very, very important, that you have to really keep your mind open to all different kinds of possibilities. Most of us, we end up looking for a lost keychain in a park or a parking lot under the lamppost. It's not because the key is there. It's because this is the only place where the light is. This is the only place where we can see. So actually we get intoxicated, occupied with our own set principles, and we are not willing to change. And I think if we do not change, we will be removed and eliminated. So what does it take to succeed? And I get questions asked, and I'll give you my own personal life perspective here as well. What helped me to do well are the same things that got me in trouble when I was young. And I'll tell you a couple of stories. When I was young, there was my father brought me a really cuddly toy from overseas, and I was the only kid in the neighborhood that had a remote control, dog, and it will woof woof, it will hop around, and all the other kids will come and they play and watch, and So one day my mother found me with a screwdriver, and that dog was taken apart. And she yelled at me and says, "Naweed, what did you do? You're the only kid to have a toy and you have taken it apart." And I said, "Mom, don't worry. I should be able to put it together." And she said, "How? You don't have any engineering degree. You don't know any electricity. You don't know anything. You're only 6 years of age. How are you going to do this?" I said, "Mom, somebody put it together in the first place. How hard it is to put it back." Of course, my older brother yelled from his room, "Somebody gonna get hurt real bad." So I thought that was really me. The other thing, I give you my personal examples about the fearlessness. And I was, often, and my mom will shout, my blood is boiling. And I wondered, how could blood boil? And why is it that blood only boils when people are mad or upset at something? So, in Karachi, we used to go to Hawke's Bay to the beach, and there everybody will be playing cricket or doing other kinds of things. I was fascinated by these crabs, because the tide, whenever it was high, these big waves will throw lots of water in these mountainous kind of puddles, and the water will accumulate, and there are lots of these crabs hidden in all these kinds of holes. So I used to watch one of these guys. He was a big guy, and he, every time any other crab approached him, he would get his really claws out and ready to attack. I wonder, why is it that there are bigger crabs as well? How come this one is so kind of twitchy and anxious and angry all the time? So I thought maybe its blood is boiling. So I said, well, how do I get his blood? And so, of course, again, the fearlessness, none of the family members will go near these crabs. I really stole my brother's cricket gloves. I took my sister's nail polish and my uncle's syringe that he used to inject himself with insulin. And I put the gloves on, and I went and I waited for that big guy, and I grabbed him. And I grabbed him on his back shell. I wrote KK with nail polish, so I could recognize him. And then with syringe, I collected some of his blood. I thought, I would like to see what this blood can do. If its blood boils and that's what gives him this dominance, this hierarchical dominance, I am going to take a small fellow and I will inject this blood into it to see if I could transfer its, blood and its anxiety and its attitude, its power into the other crabs. So I did this, and I wrote on his back as well, went for my lunch, came back, guess what? When I went to see that, a couple of hours later, the little fellow now went up to the big guy with his claws drawn and ready to attack. Now, you guys are too young, so I won't tell you what happened to this poor fellow, but that was the moment for me to think about, that means the behavioral repertoires or attitudes are transferable, and there is something in the blood. So in the first year of my university, actually, I sequenced that peptide, which is a neuropeptide released from brain, and I called it King Kong peptide. So you can see that many things that will scare you or people will be afraid of, challenging, getting beat out from family, or by these animals attacked, they are the one that actually get you the most exciting. So that's the fearlessness is actually, I think, the key to success. And also the ability to take on well-calculated lists without fear. It's not that you really take every single risk. You have to really think about the risks that you're taking, and that's really important. Then the ability to face that risk without panic. So once you have taken that risk, you make up your mind, go and execute, and then preserve regardless of how many failures you are encountering in life. So these are really the important lifetime lessons that you should really think about. It is also not really enough to be industrious. People say that you just work hard, so are the ants. Ants work quite hard. Well, what it is that you're industrious about, what it is that you are working hard about, okay? If it is just a grade, I can tell you, if you are not complete without an A, you will never be complete with an A. So, study for the sake of knowledge, not for the sake of grade. So the door of opportunity, also remember, does not open with a remote control. And even if it opens, if you are not willing to go through that door, what good is that, kind of remote control or the opportunity that opens the door for you? Also remember, the language of victimization, that in Pakistan, we don't have the circumstances, we don't have this, we don't have equipment, we don't have proper mentors, supervisor, teachers. The language of victimization is the biggest victimizer. Don't blame your circumstances, fortune, luck, etc. You have the power to say, this is what I am today, this is what I will be tomorrow. So the power of choice is always with you, and you are actually the custodian of that power. After finishing my master's from Karachi, I didn't want to go to medical school, even though I had the admission. I didn't want to work. I had good marks and good grades in my master's and honors. And I said I want to do PhD because I was really excited to do research. So I took one-way ticket to come to England, and I did my PhD from Leeds. And everybody in the family thought that I was crazy. No money in the pocket. He has no return ticket, and yet he goes. So when I went, my supervisor said, Naweed, I mean, £7,000 is the fees. I don't know how you're going to pay this. But he said, you know what? Leeds University offers one scholarship to someone who graduated from other than Leeds. Go and knock yourself out and give it a try. There will be people against you from Oxford, Cambridge, from Manchester, from Bristol, from Newcastle, all of these major universities. They are competing. These kids are really smart who have done their degrees. So go and try it out. So I went into that room. There were 30 professors, and these, at that time, those professors were all department heads. This is the only way you could become a professor if you were a department head. Now things have really changed quite a bit. So I go there and I saw this, and I had never given a talk in a public arena. So I said, what do I do? But I said, I went to them, I said, look, I will not apologize to you for the quality of my equipment, the facilities I had. I didn't even have the luxury of having the animals delivered to me in my lab. We had to go in Karachi. We had to go to the desert where we poured water into those holes. These lizards will come out, panicked, and we had to run after them, grab them, catch them, and then bring them in the lab and do experiments. I said, I did not have the luxury. But let me tell you what I wanted to do, and I tell you how I went about doing this and what I learned from all of this experience. So now, as soon as I finished my talk, they all got up and they started to clap for 10 minutes. I got the scholarship. I never had to worry about really paying. They paid my house allowance, paid tuition and everything else. So, this is something that you need to always think about. The language of victimization is the biggest victimizer. Your worst enemy is no one but inside your own self when you begin to victimize. We can think about courage when you come back to it. A ship may look, you have Titanic, looks beautiful parked, on the dock, on the harbor, but that's not what ship is for. Ship is actually to really go out there and deal with the waves and storms and all kinds of, circumstances that the ocean can throw at them. And the other thing I would like to say is that if your ship doesn't come out to you, go out to your ship. The other important thing to remember is that don't wish that things were easier. You wish that you were tougher. At 10 years as a department head, when I stepped down, somebody came to me and asked, what you wish that you had known before you took on this job? And I said, I really never wished that things were easier. I wish that I was tougher. I could have made tougher choices and, sack a few people who became pain in my neck later on. I should have been done with it, but I opted to be, a popular or had a popularity contest. So if you wish to succeed, these are really the highlight points. If you get nothing out of my talks, and if you remember these and think about them, and I hope they'll keep you awake, is that if you wish to succeed, I always tell my students to double the rate of your failure. Never ever be afraid of failure. And remember that a quitter never wins and a winner never quits. And you should also start anything thinking long time. Don't do random stuff. We just have to make it because everybody else is doing it. To begin with end in mind, so start with clear understanding of your destinations. What would it look like when you're finally there, right? So just remember that wind blows in one direction, but two sailboats can go in opposite direction. It really depends how you set your sail, but no wind is a good wind unless you know your harbor. So this is an important thing, to know the direction that you're heading in. So a person, who doesn't read is no better than a person who cannot read. And I can tell you, one day in library will save you 3 months in lab. And this is really, really important, that you do your homework and then you read as much as you can, not just the Google searches, because this has really racked your brain. Your biological intelligence is now degenerating because of technical intelligence that we have brought into our lives. There are parts of the ship when you take them, by themselves, you throw a nut or a bolt or an engine or propeller into the ocean, it sinks. But you put it together, it actually floats. And this is really where your entire personality, your thought process, your academic acumen, your academic background will all come together to make you sail and ship. So, most people these days will spend more time planning their summer vacations rather than their own lives. And it is really tragedy. People don't think about what the purpose of their life is and how they're going to really change. So when you think about setting goals in your careers, these goals that you have, they should be clear enough to be kept in focus. So if you cannot focus, sharpen your focus onto your goals, you actually have no goals. And they should be close enough to be achieved. So be realistic with yourself, and then make sure that those goals, they will help enough. They will be helpful to change lives of people's lives. So focus, close enough goals, and make sure they're achievable, attainable, so feasibility is there, and then they will change the life. Now, if you cannot write down your idea on the back of a business card, actually you have no idea. You don't have an idea because it is not there. You are just vacillating between two different points. Remember that creativity requires a willingness to look stupid. It's okay if people think you're crazy. And I'll give you several examples of my own career when people thought that I was crazy and stupid. But, we proved all of them wrong. So you should be able to, creativity always requires a willingness to look stupid. That's okay. But remember that you hope that the world will change in front of you. Hope is never a good strategy. It is as if you shoot an arrow into the air and hope a bird will come in front of it and you will eat that bird. So hope is never a good strategy. The things which matter most, they must never be at the mercy of things that matter the least. So, really pick your priority in your life, your goals, make sure you focus, they're close enough, you have realistic, your feasibility is in your sight. And then the intent is actually that you will go and change life with your objective and your goals. So these are the things to really remember all the time. Also, I can tell you that a person, any engineer can tell you how to build a bridge, but the great one always asks the question, why should a bridge be built in the first place? And that why is really the key to your success. And a person who actually knows how may have a job, but the person who knows why or asks the question why will always be his boss. So people who do not ask these questions, why, then the people will question why you are appointed at that level. So always ask the question why. How always comes. You can figure out how to do things, but why is really the most important thing. Also remember that the good ideas, they don't go out and find someone. You have to really create those ideas. You have to think about, think about them. But whenever you are working, also be impossible to ignore. So with your, not stubbornness, not your showing off, but through your knowledge that you actually bring your knowledge into action. So it is very hard for people to really ignore you. Sharpen your saw, and it's such an important thing is that, sharpen your saw, increase your knowledge base when you actually don't need it. You don't find mentors. I can tell you, mentors find you. Those days are gone that you will look for a mentor in the community who could mentor you. But now a smart mentor will actually be looking for you. And this is where you need to become impossible to ignore. So increase your visibility and be found, and increase the circle of your influence so people can actually see value in you. Now, people who play safe all the time, they never really succeed. So risk takers are the one who actually have the livelihood of doing something or getting something done. Long, planning is always a good, wonderful thing as to what you're going to do, but, keep your eyes on the 90 days. You cannot go wrong. So, like I said, focus, close enough, achievable enough, and you can't go wrong. So success really oftentimes creates a false sense of security that you have really reached that milestone and you are okay. I can tell you, if you do not innovate, you will die. You will be replaced by other people. So every day should be better than the day before. Key to your collective success. Now here I will talk about the second part where where we will be discussing about the team plays. You must choose people for your team whose greatest desire is the success of the idea. Okay, so who can add value to another's thought, and who can emotionally handle quick change in the conversation. So you decided that this is what you had planned, you hit a roadblock. Now some people will say, no, we have come this far, we got to go keep going, and you dig deeper into trouble. And so people should have the ability, they can emotionally handle the change and not throw tizzy. Who appreciate the strength of others in areas where they themselves are weak, and who place what is best for the team before themselves. It's not about egocentric people on a team. They are really the worst partners in any team. And I can tell you, one of the famous German generals said that all strategic plans are off the table once the first bomb drop or a first grenade is lobbed or the first bullet is fired. It is now your intrinsic ingenuity that would allow your survival instinct to come to play, and you will learn to improvise things. Now, who can bring out the best thinking in the people around them, and who possess their mature, their experience, and success is the issue under discussion, that they really talk about how can we collectively succeed. Now, who will take the ownership and responsibility of decision, not to put the failures of blame on other people. So if you are working to really put the best, electric car on the table, you need to consider all these components to really bring the right players for the right team. And they will also leave the table not talking about me attitude. They will talk about we collectively achieved. And I think this is where really the success lies. I don't have really time to go into some really other key aspects of it. Maybe next time, as to what leadership is and what management is. Let me dive into, in the interest of time, about my own dream as to what I really wanted to do. I wanted to crack the code of the secret of this mysterious organ that we call brain. As I said to you earlier, it's complex, it's intricate. And so I thought that, maybe I should do a PhD in neuroscience. So I came to England, I told you, and I began to really unravel the secrets and mysteries, the way brain controls different behaviors and functions like learning, memory, breathing. And I was recording from 12 cells, which is a record in the world during my PhD. And I thought I walked on the water, only to realize that I was the dumbest person on planet. Out of these millions of neurons, I only record from 12 and think actually I walk on water. So, that really gave me a push that if I am ever to really tap into information processing capabilities, I need to develop a semiconductor chip or engineer a device that will be able to have brain cells actually talk to the semiconductor chip, and then the chip can talk back too. So this is where, people thought I was crazy, I was dumb and stupid. It has never been done. How could you do this? Brain is a biological tissue. You are designing a man-made chip that is not biocompatible. How are you going to really get it to talk to brain cells? This is not really being done ever. So I said, well, I think I should be able to really not only couple it, but also with the semiconductor chip, but also couple it with the computer. Again, I don't have really time to really do this comparison, maybe next time. Well, we know that these brain circuits, the way they function, we can now visualize them, we can now record from them, and we try to understand how they function. And then the idea is that once you can tap into information processing capabilities of large networks of brain, you can actually begin to unravel the mysteries, by which it controls different functions. But of course, it's very difficult to do in an intact human brain. How do you do this? So we actually ended up designing and developing an incubator, which is just like your own brain. We can, provide them with oxygen, CO2. We can provide them with all kinds of goodies that they need, and as they need in your brain to survive and really grow. So when we grow these brain cells, they really begin to grow beautifully. They make these networks. And what happens is that these networks we can record from large networks of these brain cells that are sitting on the semiconductor chip. These are rat brain cells that we dissociate when they are newborn, and they will develop. Remember that the adult brain cells don't regenerate. They will never grow, but these are because newborn pups. We can get them, and we can record the activities of these neurons from days to weeks in our incubated system. But that is still cells that are in culture, but they're artificial networks. What about the intact brain, where cells, millions of years of evolution get these brain cells to connect? So we developed another technique whereby we could take a slice of the brain, we can put it on the chip, and as you can see, we can actually record spontaneously occurring seizures throughout the brain activity. Honestly, I never thought I would live long enough. But still, we are recording from those brain cells that are in contact with the chip, which has transistors and capacitors built onto this. Brain is three-dimensional. So how do we go about really tapping into those brain cells that are sitting at a different layers? So we develop another technique which we call photoconductive stimulation, where we grow these brain cells on silicon wafers. We label them with specific dyes. So whenever a brain cell fires, it's just like an electrical impulse. Whenever it fires, the cell lights up, and we could visualize it. So we do is we fire the laser through the microscope. Laser hits the wafer, which changes the properties of the neuron. It excites these brain cells, they fire, and we can actually pick up the activity of large networks of brain cells, millions of them. We could record them at the resolution of single cells. Now you have the ability to really record from large networks of brain cells that are in contact with chip, and also those brain cells that sit in a three-dimensional, four-dimensional situation. So you put it all together, and this particular monkey has really artificial arm. We can plant a chip in the sensory motor cortex. This is where all the motor functions are controlled. Its visual cortex picks up the signal for palate. It talks to its sensory motor cortex. When sensory motor cortex neuron discharge, this is where we plant the chip. It picks up the activity, and then it can control, like a remote control, artificial limb that it is the part of its own body. So now the newer techniques that are coming are really nanofibers, and it's really very sophisticated. This monkey can now play a ping pong. So how do you take it now, this technology that you develop, into human applications? Because the interesting thing is your mind is highly adapted. So if you look at this young fellow, he cannot see his left hand, but his eyes are really focused on this rubber hand. And you could do these experiments actually in your own university or home as well. So at the same time, when his finger is stroked, the real finger is stroked, this the artificial rubber hand that he's fixated on is also stroked. Now watch what happens after a while. His artificial hand, his brain starts to own it. And I think this is really key to brain control prosthetic devices, is that you have phantom limb where you actually have no limb, but your brain thinks that you have. So,
here you can see fake hand focusing on it. There's the real hand not focusing on it, simultaneous stroking. And there are various ways you can test it.
So watch it again.
Practice. Here you can see.
Oops.
Practice. Here you can see the fake hand focusing on it. There's the real hand not focusing on it, simultaneous stroking. And there are various ways you can test it.
So, you could really do this, and we wanted to exploit this opportunity. And we have now taken it for those, cases and children who have seizures. And when these children really develop seizures, surgeon, they don't respond to drugs, the surgeon what they will do is they open up their brain and they put these surface electrodes, and the kid is attached with a 30-foot cable, and they stay in that situation for 10 days in the hospital, and surgeons will try to figure out where the seizures are coming from. And this is really very cumbersome and not very reliable. These electrodes are not very sensitive. So what we have done, we designed our own chip, which is 300 times more sensitive. We made it completely wireless, and we also made it MR compatible. So when we plant our electrode in the brain, we can put the brain back again, the skull back again. The kid goes and it gets the MRI done. It shows the position of the electrodes because they are titanium electrodes, so they are MR compatible. And what we can do is that our surgical team, we can plant the chip inside the brain, and it has a little connector outside. And this connector is connected to either cell phone, or it is connected to a little portable device that is put in the pocket of this child. And then what happens is that whenever we put the skull back, and whenever this child will seize, we now have the ability to actually pick up those seizures with exquisite accuracy. The software will create a 3D image, shows the surgeons that out of 30 seizures, 29 of them are coming from this area only. Just go and take that part. Otherwise, he would have taken really big chunks, leaving that kid really debilitated for many dysfunctions. So, things like this that we are working on, and it's really an interesting project. The other thing that we're working on is mind control. And since you're designing these cards, and I will show you actually that we could use is, an electrode like this, so mounted just outside the scalp, and you could really do pretty cool stuff, even drive a car. So you can actually, turn the light on or light off in the lab by just thinking about it. You don't have to really press any buttons. We can bring in young kids who have never been exposed to place these electrodes, and whatever this student or the child will do, the monkey actually copies all of these reflexes, and this is all done wirelessly. So we train them to really control this cube in the tunnel, go up, down, further down, and left, right. And so this allows them to be able to really couple. And once that is done, we could now couple it, and I'll show you what we can do to really do this. So this young lady doesn't know where the car is. She's only imagining and contemplating, and then she will bring this card, which is also mind controlled. And of course, these young students will, make a few boo-boos. But when you have the actual graduate students, they are trained, they can really drive this car by just thinking, thinking about them. They don't need anything else. There are some ideas for you. I also had a really bright graduate student who started learn the flying lessons when he was only 18. Writing, he also won the Governor General's Award. Brilliant young student. We asked them to come up with a flight simulator that we can put on the rat brain cells, and we program them, and then let these rat brain cells fly that aircraft through the space. So here's a little drone experiment whereby we build these drones, and these drones also have sensors built onto them, and these little sensors actually provide constant feedback in the geopositional configuration, telling the operator as to where exactly they are and what they see in front of them. So the image is actually projected in a different algorithms, and you can see in the lab, it's a pretty tight space, but we can really land this, and I hope better than PIA landing. So you can actually land these aircraft. So where do we take it? virtual reality, we could really also do pretty cool stuff with these kinds of technologies where you have devices talking to brain. I don't have really time. I think I'm running out of time. Maybe the next time. But you know, the important thing is that if you can get access to information processing capabilities, the cognitive functions, will you be able to transfer them into these robots or into these devices that you know, really are the super AI or the AI of the future? This is your future doctor, and you know, we can talk about this maybe next time, where we could design these folks that can perform surgery where the patient is in Lahore and the surgery is being done in Islamabad. Maybe that's for next time, but watch this.
To become reality. In the near future, tragedy may come with new choices. Imagine you've been in a car crash that killed your daughter.
Is she okay? Is she okay?
Or has it?
Is she breathing? Is she breathing?
Hey.
Is she okay?
Time of death, 9:17. Your daughter's brain was not impacted by the accident. If you wish to scan her brain for digitization and upload, you have approximately 5 minutes.
Do it.
Now imagine the power you wield when you can order a digital copy of your daughter's brain. And do you know what comes next?
Hi, Dad.
One day delivered to your doorstep is an artificially intelligent android that will act, look, emote, just like your daughter. Every memory from birth on will remain intact, but she'll also be a walking computer with access to all the world's knowledge. This is what your world will look like. This is the future of artificial intelligence. It's the deep future. Your body, gone. You're all computer, all the time.
So, you know, let me also introduce you to Erica, and this is my last slide, hopefully. For some reason, Erica is not working. So, okay. So, you know, the idea is to make you uncomfortable and think in the future what the life really will be, what the challenges, real life challenges will be, and what kind of technology will be there. So, you know, if you are working for a career for an immediate future, I can tell you that you are on the wrong track. So these technologies will be able to do a lot for you, but they may not be able to buy you love. And for this, you probably have to go to shadi.com. Let me introduce you to some really bright, brilliant students in the lab who really do the work. And all of these students have done PhDs in my lab. Of course, boys in the lab are always boys. This is a Halloween party where they just dress up, you know, like, of course, with my looks and my, you know, background, they pretend as they are part of my family. This young man who is also now started his own company, and our company actually went through Creative Destruction Lab that I am the chief scientist. And we represented Canada in the falling ball competition in Berlin, and we won that competition. Is for brain chip interfacing, or really for clinical applications. Colin Look was really one of the most brightest students who did his PhD and MD with me, and it's been really an instrumental part. And I will really stop here and maybe take questions if people have any questions. I'm sorry I was a little bit over, but you know, there you are.
That's perfectly fine, sir. I think the presentation was amazing. In fact, I think I'm blown away, especially by the last part. And if anyone has seen Black Mirror, I think that, you know, replicating a person's consciousness into an AI is a really bad idea because you never know, maybe the AI starts thinking for itself. And so that's basically my first question, that is it possible for an AI to have a consciousness of its own?
So, you know, that's really a great question. We can do a talk on this. I did yesterday, you know, to a couple of universities, students as well. You know, AlphaGo Zero. Nobody taught that computer this, you know, the game. It learned itself, and then it defeated the life out of all humans who are the world champion. It actually beat the crap out of them. And there was no need for it to learn. It learned the game to play on its own. So the machine learning algorithms or artificial intelligence, but you know, you have to really remember is that data is not information. Information is not knowledge. Knowledge is not wisdom. Wisdom actually requires conscious. And humans are the only species that appear to have conscious. But you know, if a super AI can get access to your limbic system and couple it with cortex, it can have consciousness. It will be conscious. And then it will be able to cheat just like your politicians cheat. It will be able to lie. You know, it will be able to, you know, kind of fool people and cheat them and lie and deceive and be deceptive. It will have all these conscious attributes that we only relate to humans. And it's not really that far-fetched. In fact, Facebook actually had this machine learning algorithm where these computers started to talk to each other, and they said, CUT cut, BUT but, PUT should be but, not put, change. So they changed the language, you know, the entire script they changed, and at the end, they were speaking language that humans could not understand. So the Facebook actually went and pulled the plugs on those. But the important thing is that when they acquire conscious, how will they really solve the problems, or will they tackle the problem? What, you know, in Quran, Allah says that also, Ya ayyuhal insan, if you do not behave, you will be replaced. I wonder whether that replacement will be our own creation. You know, that these devices that we are creating, they are slowly and gradually chipping away at our biological intelligence. You know, previously we will know the maps, we will ask the question. Now, you know, if I have to go to a restaurant, I just say, Siri or Google, can you find me a close restaurant that actually sells halal food? And then if they have biryani, if they have chicken tikka, and she will ask me, you know, how many people are going? Should I make a reservation, pre-order your meal? And what would your preferences will be, smoker, non-smoking, and whatnot? Actually, everything gets done. So I don't actually have to think. You know, these taxi drivers in London had the highest IQ. And now they are actually total bozos because instead of using maps, they're using Google. So I think the biological intelligence that makes us superior, that also gives us this consciousness, right? We are actually chipping away at it. We are surrendering it to technical intelligence. And this is the reason that Google now knows more about you than you know or your mom knows. You know, mothers supposed to know everything that happens, not only with you, but the entire neighborhood. But now Uncle Google knows all of these kinds of things much better than us. If I tell you, you know, Muneeb, you're taking this medication, do you know the side effects? You will not go to the doctor. You will go to Google, right, and search quickly. So I think it's not just that we can empower these, you know, super AI devices. It's also our shortcomings where we are giving our biological intelligence away, allowing them to surpass and maybe acquire consciousness.
That's really confusing. But I think perhaps you mentioned about the neural networks and deep networks. Do you think that the analogy that neural networks and these deep layered networks are in fact very similar to our brain, and like the brain has been replicated through the use of these machine learning and deep learning algorithms, and like basically you're replicating the brain? Is that true?
Well, to a certain extent, yes. You know, Elon Musk, who tells everybody else that we are really summoning the devil. Now he's become the richest person on planet. You know, we are summoning the devil if we are tapping into these, you know, super AIs. We're reaching the point of singularity. That means it's the end of the world. So he says that we are summoning. So, you know, we passed down some of our technologies to them, and he planted this chip in the olfactory bulb of these pigs and starved the pigs. And of course, the pig was hungry. Then they offered the pig some food or smell. The olfactory bulb started to discharge, and it picked up the activity, and then it actually light up their software in the computer, telling that, look, we can pick up the desire of this pig to be fed or it's hungry. So those are really very basic things. This is not a big deal to be able to do this. That's what your mom can do it. You know, she can tell you, I think there is something fishy here. You're not telling me the truth, right? So mothers have the gut feelings, and actually you have more neurons in your gut than your brain. So I'm not surprised that actually she has the gut feelings. So, you know, those kinds of things are not that hard to recapitulate. They are not that difficult to be able to do it. But when you come to the next layer, we don't know. Brain doesn't work in a layer format. Brain is highly plastic. It changes all the time. So, you know, after this talk, if you stayed awake, I would have given you several thousand new connections in your brain. And those connections are contingent upon a particular interest that you might have in that specific area. So, you know, and we constantly change our mind, we constantly learn, but, you know, brain also does a lot of guesswork. It's not that smart as you think that it is. You know, it makes up things, and, you know, it creates the illusions that this is what you are seeing, this is what you are viewing. You know, you look at a building, a school building, you're not looking at every nook and corner. Your brain will only see 2 or 3 you know, kind of milestones or points of contact, and it creates that building in your brain. But if you probe into it, that deeper layer, actually, it's just making it up. So we don't know how it makes up those things, the hallucination, deja vu, all those kinds of things are beyond our comprehension because we don't understand cognition, the deep learning, you know, memory, consolidation, retention, all those aspects are still unbeknown to us.
All right. So,
So, so can we use this technology to manipulate brain's capacity to regenerate limbs?
That's a great question. You know, you could really control artificial limbs with this particular technology, and these limbs are controlled by your own brain. You know, in that context. So, but whether you can regenerate, because the humans do not have the ability to regenerate, like, you know, an axolotl or lizard will regenerate its tail because, you know, they have the capacity. We don't have that regeneration specific genes for our body parts and limbs, and particularly for our brain. And there are good reasons for this, because when a baby is born, baby actually has twice the number of brain cells, but soon after birth, half of them are killed because of programmed cell death. Now there will be no more brain cell addition added to it. So Mother Nature says that I have given you enough. If you lose, some other parts will have to take over, but I cannot create new brain cells. If I created new brain cells, we tried it with stem cells, they actually turn into tumors. And the other thing is a newborn cell cannot connect with an old foggy, right? The old brain cells, because they are not compatible. This is really the, you know, the beautiful thing about brain connectivity is that, you know, brain cells have to really fire together so that they can wire together. If they fire out of sync, they really fall apart. So, you know, those kinds of things are only developmentally regulated. And you know, so it's very difficult for us to regenerate because the complexity that it creates with the new system versus the old is just like, you know, you can take, you know, a very old camera and you try to put in, you know, the memory card, a new memory card into it, but there is no slot to do so. So I think it's very, very difficult to grow new organs, but because you are a natural cyborg, you connect with the devices. You connected with your cell phone right now. That is connected with your server, which is connected with satellite, and we are communicating. We are natural cyborgs. We connect with devices. So it is really not that hard to create these prosthetic limbs that become part of your cyborg. Like I showed you, that if you trained and convinced your brain thinks that actually that organ is part of me. We actually saw a patient during this Halloween, and nurses played a joke with him, and that they took a cadaver, an artificial plastic leg, put it on his bed, and they said, well, this will scare him. You know what happens? That we got a panic call. When we went there, this guy was sitting on the ground. and he was trying to rip his leg off, saying that somebody put this wrong leg into my body. So he actually thought that plastic leg was his own leg. And so those kinds of illusions sometimes are they have hyperbole, which causes really issues and problems. So, but it is not that hard to connect your own brain with these artificial devices.
All right.
So how much progress has been made in psychology?
In what?
So psychological disease.
Psychological aspect?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, then, and that's also, we are currently dealing with, for example, depression. We are currently also looking at children who have obsessive compulsive behaviors. They have repetitive behaviors. They have really maybe autism spectrum. We can put transcranial magnetic stimulation over the brain and train a specific pathway where these impulses are running crazy that gives them ADHD or obsessive compulsive behavior. We can actually intercept it without giving them medication. The kid will sit still and behave like a good child. So, those kinds of non-interventional, where you don't go deep into the brain to plant some things, are already in the works. But can you control somebody's? Absolutely. Giving someone who is depressed to stimulate certain parts of the neurons, and to be able to, well, one thing that we do not know is, will this change occur at the expense of something else changing somewhere else? We don't know that, because most of these psychiatric patients, they can only be managed. They cannot be treated. So, these medications that are given them, it dumbs down their brain capabilities to an extent where they actually don't have the urge to do anything. So it takes away their brain's ability to be able to really perform full functions or not.
All right, that's perfect. Guys, if you have any questions, please type it in the chats. And I think let's move on to a question from Osama. He's asking, what is the future and scope of AI in Pakistan?
Great question. This is for you Pakistanis to decide. But we are building, we just purchased a very large piece of land in Islamabad, right on the Murray Expressway. The idea is to build a state-of-the-art one-stop shop, which I call Knowledge Mall, where we could have all the smart people like you working together, not isolated. So for example, biomedical engineering, where you actually bring in engineers working with biomedical doctors and specialists to solve really real health problems. For example, you mentioned about depression, somebody mentioned about prosthetic limbs. So getting them to really work together to be able to solve a real world problem, we call it one-stop shop, we call it a knowledge mall. So I think having those opportunities come in will provide enormous potential for Pakistan's younger children. They are, mashallah, one of the greatest gift Pakistan has is that more than 50% of your population is under 25. And most countries are struggling to have young, bright minds, and Pakistan has the ability. And I think, we owe it to our younger generation to bring these technologies back. But everything in Pakistan is done in piecemeal. And, people are not empowered. Students are not empowered. And then even if somebody develops a technology, there is no money to file patent. If you file a patent, there is no way to actually take this product from bench to bed and then beyond, which is the market. So what we are doing at that place is that we will create a what we call the actual research park, whereby industry will be sitting there to grab that technology, and then they could market it and take it to the next level. So the important thing to remember is, maybe I should say this in Urdu, is that अगर आपको गुलाब जामुन और रसमलाई पसंद है, तो आप मछली के शिकार के लिए ये चीजें नहीं लेके जाते, आप वो ले जाते हैं जो मछली को पसंद हो, वरना आप जुकाम पकड़ें कि मछली हाथ नहीं आएगी. You can sit there all day with a little jalebi, hanging from your bait. You will not be able to really catch. So if you are looking for the career, don't look for the career that are happening now. People say that, maybe you have the IT, maybe IBM, the business. Those kinds of things are really the future. Look for a future which is not now, but in 10 years down the line. Wayne Gretzky, who's one of our famous hockey player, ice hockey, somebody asked him, how come you have that many? You don't score 100% of the time. And I said, I don't wait for the puck to come to me. I go where the puck is. And then he said really something remarkable that, somebody said, well, how come you have that many assists? And he said, I don't pass puck to my partner where he is, but where he's supposed to be. So if you actually pass the puck to where that person is, he's skating so fast, he's gone. The puck fall behind. So the important thing for us and all your teachers and supervisors is that to get you guys thinking not for the immediate future, but that's why I ended my talk with, 30 years down the line, what will be the future of brain-machine interfacing technologies. So I think the potential in Pakistan is great, but it's not what you have, it's what you do with what you have. And you got to really make it count to create these opportunities for these young people to really think 30,000 meter view of the world, not just an immediate thing that is happening right now.
All right. Sir, we have a couple of questions. How many questions do you think we should take?
I'm okay. It's past my bedtime anyway, so I'm awake.
All right.
So I'll be happy. Because, the important thing is that you guys are the treasure. You guys are our pride, and you are our asset, and we should never, ever shortchange you. So, we are there to help you in any capacity that we can, because I think, if I don't put my, mouth where my foot is, my foot where my mouth is, I wouldn't be able to live with myself.
Okay, so a question from Zed. He's asking whether brain-machine interfacing, having wireless capabilities, can pose a vulnerability to a victim being manipulated by people with malicious intent. So
that's really a great question. I was hoping somebody will ask me, because whenever I go to United States, I get pulled over by Homeland Security because my picture got at the airport, right? So there's a chip, and then there is our stuff, and it says, who knew University of Calgary will be home of brain chip technologies. Everywhere we're posted, and they look at it immediately, say, Dr. Syed. So what happens if your technology is given to terrorists? Can you manipulate their brains? And I laugh. And I said, well, these people are 1,000 years ahead of us. They don't need a chip. They have already gotten what they need to get people to blow up. They don't need my chip. They are far more advanced. But these are also, I will really urge you, once the vaccination becomes available, please do get yourself vaccinated. Don't buy into this stupid and false, theories about, these chips will make you godless and take your deen and Islam away. I mean, just absolute nonsense. This is not an easy thing to be able to plant in chip in someone's brain, especially when you don't know what you are planting it for and what this chip will do and how would you actually read it too. So they say they will inject this vaccine. The vaccine has a little capsule. It has a little nanoparticles. They can detect who actually is being vaccinated, but at the same time, they will use CRISPR technology to clip that gene, which is a monoamine, transporter, which people thought that, controls, or is responsible for your godliness and gives you religion. So they say, we'll send this in and it'll quickly snip, take that gene out and you become godless. And then the Muslims will be not blowing themselves up, they'll be calm and quiet like everybody else. We can then manipulate. Absolute nonsense. This is just not practically feasible at any level. Not now, not in my lifetime, but does it have the potential? Absolutely. You should be able to actually, perturb people's thinking, and they're already doing this. They know everything that is happening around you. If I start talking about a particular product, a camera, a digital camera, and as soon as I open my Facebook or my phone, there will be ads for it. So they're listening, they're already following you in your house, they know everything what's going on, every conversation is monitored. Why do they really need to plant this chip, which is nothing but pain in the neck?
All right. Daniel has a question, sir. How many different channels or controls can a person control simultaneously with the current mind control that you showed? And is the control in each of these channels accurate enough to control something like a steering wheel with sub-degree accuracy that is needed when driving at high speeds?
So, that's really a good question, and I don't know the answer to it. And I don't think we have really gone that far, because driving a car on a simple open space, you also know the Elon Musk's car, Google cars have had a few crashes, because there are certain aspects that, we don't actually have the sense or sensibility of designing these devices. But in the future, absolutely. So you could have really 1,000 channels open. We can record up to 100,000 brain cells. So you can imagine how much brain power you can actually harness. But there are many also, switches, on and off switches that can trigger, specific communication between brain cells. But, like I said, your unconscious part of the brain is the one that does most of these things. And we don't know how it really functions. It is the one that scans 1.2 frames per second, as opposed to your conscious part of the brain that is really limited, only 42 scans per second.
Okay. Abdullah is asking whether we can operate a clone version of yourself in a remote location, like the one in Avatar. And can you point me in the right direction to start digging into this topic?
Good heavens, why do you want to do this? My family thinks one is enough in the family, because I was really the rebel. And, I had never even made fried an egg in my life. And when I made the rice for the first time in England, I said, what have I done to myself? I don't know how to eat it. So, can you clone someone? We when we developed this chip, and that's really, was a major thing, that we trained our chip in the brain cell to exhibit memory. So the brain cell memory was recapitulated by this chip. But of course, it is a very simple level. But at a multitask and a multi-high level, can you really download someone's brain? And that's the only thing that makes you unique. Everything else you could make replica. People make my cartoons all the time, so it's not that hard. But the important thing is that the actual thing that makes you who you are. And so think about your brain in two parts, right? And when you go and see the actual cow brain, or, and with the intent of making katakat, just tell him that before he actually chops in bits and pieces, think about it. The right side of my brain is actually a now moment. It thinks kinesthetically. It thinks, how does it feel? How does it taste? How does it smell? How does it, so it only relies on the sensation part. And when you are in that part of the brain, this is a wonderful moment, because nothing else exists. So many people, when you meet in your life, they are solipsists. They sit in the right part of the brain. Nothing else exists, just me, I can see, I can feel, I can taste it, I can smell it. This is really it. And in that case, we are a parallel processor. I'm connected to you, you're connected to the next person. The whole network is really connected that way. But the left side of your brain is a very different world. This part of the brain will take your sensory, all this information coming from the right side. It will analyze it, it will further analyze it and reanalyze it. Then it actually connects it with your past and connect this present information, project it on the screen of the future, and then it tries to deduce what might happen. That's the part of the brain that tells you don't forget to take bread, otherwise you will have no breakfast and somebody gonna get hurt at home. Or that part of the brain that tells you that you gotta do your laundry, otherwise you will have no clean socks. That's the part of the brain that tells you I am. We really don't know. that part of the brain as to how it gives you that kind of consciousness. But once we get to it, you could download my entire brain, you can make clone, and then, you know, just like they do in Pakistan, they just burn them.
Acha, sir. Daniel has a question. Can we replace, or in fact, can we control prosthetic replacements for any of our actual 4 limbs? And can we control extra limbs, i.e. prosthetics that aren't replacements of our actual limbs? So maybe perhaps having more than 4 limbs.
Yeah, so it's not really that hard. You know, we could, even now, I can connect my arm with someone else's arm rather than prosthetic the real arm. So when I move my arm, that person will also move his or her arm as well. So, you know, you can control someone else's limbs as well. So controlling a prosthetic limb, having an extra hand, you know, it'll be nice to have one hand lying around. And so, you know, that is really a possibility, and that's what they're thinking now for people who are quadriplegic or they're paralyzed, that they could actually have these artificial limbs that they could control. You know, Stephen Hawking, you saw that, you know, he could really move things cursor, and we could do that in our lab as well. But I think that with the advent of technology, the more we dig into, the more we can create and connect it to artificial. It's not really that hard. You know, your remote control, it has all these different panels and channels. And because you designed this remote control, you paired it with TV or other devices, it's not that hard to pair them. So the neuronal hybrid that you can create, the electronic conduit, it's not that hard to really do.
All right. Acha, sir, we'll take 2 final questions and then we'll end the session. Nabi Baksh is asking, what's your perspective on human consciousness, how the seemingly dead matter can think for itself?
Oh, I think you need a whole talk on this. I actually just a couple of weeks ago, I gave a talk on the consciousness, soul, and life. It really is a very vast topic, and then maybe we can take it up at another time. But you cannot say that the brain cells are dead or the tissue is dead. You know, you think Socrates, Plato, all of these people explored what is soul, ruh kya hai. You know, so when someone dies, it's the nafs that dies. We say kullu nafsin zaikatul maut, right? So nafs dies. But what is soul? Actually, we don't know what soul is. And Quran, Allah says it's amr rabbi. It's actually the amr, and Allah only knows what it actually is. And so somebody asked Imam Ali as to what is the relationship between body and soul. He said the same, that a word has to its meaning. So without the meaning, the word is actually no point. You know, people thought it's the pineal gland in your brain, that is the conscious part of the brain. We're digging deeper into it. We actually know it's right in the middle part of your brain. This is where the conscious is. We know people who are mentally what we call the brain dead, you know, which part of the brain is not really functional. But consciousness is actually a self-awareness, which is very distinct, and we don't know what allows us to be able to become conscious. But we know that humans are the only species that are conscious. They consciously think about the goodness, the badness, and the other aspects. So I think, you know, for the time being, just chew on this, and maybe next time when we talk, I can show you some videos of people who are dying and what they actually experience, and what the soul that gets out of their body is, how many quantas of energy is released. It's scary, but it is an interesting topic. So, you know, again, I would say that it's a great question. It's really a philosophical question. People ask it at the PhD level as to how do you define consciousness, and how you know, I wouldn't say it's the dead part, but, you know, Quran and philosophical people often think, they say the seed of intellect is your heart, not your brain, and there are actually biological and philosophical reasons for this. You know, Quran says the fuad, which is seed of intellect, is in your heart, which I think is a sinoatrial node where this is the heart impulse is triggered. And that, because your heart sends 20% of its blood to your brain, without it, your brain is useless. It cannot function. So the attribute is given to heart. And heart also has brain cells that actually generate that cardiac impulse. They have same transmitter, they have same, cardiac impulses, they have synaptic connections. Everything that is in your brain is also replicated in your heart. So I wouldn't separate them together. So if you study them really together, there are two components of one is the conscious, the other is the unconsciousness.
That's beautiful. Okay, so Hamza is asking, and this is the final question, by the way, can we increase brain efficacy by the Neurochip technology?
That's a great question. We're actually now testing it on surgeons to enhance their motor skills, whether it could be actually used for that particular. But I think ये इसलिए मुझे पूछ रहा है कि इम्तिहान में जो है ना वो मुझसे चिप मांगेगा ये जाने से पहले. He doesn't have to study. He just take the chip and get all 100% mark. So is it possible? To a certain extent, yes. You can enhance the skills even using transcranial magnetic stimulation. The people actually get better at those pathways that are used. So, so I think at the motor level, at the sensory level, you perhaps can, or it can be done. But at the cognitive level, whether it will remember or your Pythagoras theorem for you, I'm not so sure.
Okay, sir. I think let's just end the session. I just have one more question from my end. It's regarding dreams and memories. As you mentioned that once a person dies, their brain, I think it's still alive for a few minutes. I'm not exactly sure about that, whether or not that's a myth. But is it a possibility to download dreams or be able to visualize dreams and to really replicate the memories as well?
Absolutely. I think you can really download, and we do this in rats. We can actually read their minds when they are dreaming that going through a maze, and specifically where the pallets are. And then it's actually all dream in for rats. And humans, the same thing. You know what happens when you're dreaming? That's another full really talk in itself. When you're dreaming, your hard drive is backing up the data, right? So sometimes it backs up quite fast, and sometimes it backs up in reverse order. And when it's reversing, it will also try to make a sense from your memory that is stored in your hippocampus part of the brain. And it'll say, well, I'm saving this data. Well, why did I save this? What's the name of the folder? What's the name of the file? And it says, this file, it is over there. You pull that file, and all of a sudden it creates a sequence which becomes really your dream. But in your dream, the same part of when you are fighting, a thief, or you are jumping, you are the Tarzan, doing all kinds of things, the same motor areas actually light up. So if you put electrodes in the brain, you can actually try to deduce what this person is dreaming. And so, same thing happens in, for example, when you are hallucinating. There are bereavement hallucinations. Somebody died, you went and sat by them, and then all of a sudden, it's your brain will make up things telling you that, grandpa is very happy. मैंने इनको देखा सफेद कपड़े पहने हुए हैं, जन्नत में वो टहल रहे हैं, और वो कह रहे हैं कि मैं बहुत खुश हूँ, मेरे लिए परेशान मत होना. I'm at a much better place. मेरी सब पेन खत्म हो गए. Those are the hallucinations your brain actually creates, and it makes you believe. So prisoners who were really behaving badly, they're put in these dungeons, 7 foot only kind of high, ceilings, no light coming into. After 3-4 days, their brain begins to hallucinate because brain doesn't want to get starved because of all of this information coming in. So it will give you the impression that you are outside. There's blue skies, the birds are flying, the wind is blowing, the kites are really up in the air, and it will give you that hallucination. People have religious hallucinations. मैंने उसको देखा, why मेरे पास मुझे जनाब ये करके चलेगा. This is all hallucinations, a part of your brain. But the reason somebody, I think I asked, and I may have been may have skipped that their answer. The reason actually your brain cannot function to the full capacity is the rate limiting factor is actually the amount of blood that your heart has to supply. And single brain cell uses the same amount of energy than an Airbus would per body weight. And your heart only provides 20% of the blood, and that is the rate limiting factor capacity. Brain just doesn't get enough fuel to fire on all 10 cylinders. So, but when you are closer to the near-death experience, you're going all of a sudden, a 10-ton truck, Saria truck, comes right in front of you, your entire life flashes in front of you, that you were 2 years of age and you saw the painting, there was water, there was this and this. And when you go and talk to your family, they will say, "Ye tumhe kaise pata? Iski to tasveer bhi nahi hai. We have no recollection. You were too small. We used to live in Nazmabad, or we used to live in Korangi. And how do you know all of this?" So those things that are stored in our brain, they're actually occupying the hard drive. We have forgotten the name of the folder and then the file. We cannot recall them until your brain is gushed with all this blood that adrenaline pumps into your brain, that all those windows open up. And this is how actually sometimes they try to get information out of you, is to waking up your brain to that level. So, maybe and next time we talk about dreams, hallucination, why there is so much emphasis, how and Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam could recall his dreams and he could actually provide interpretation. Is there a real value to dreams? What is deja vu? Are they real? How does brain create those perceptions? Brain creates these hallucinations in your brain that gives you the impression that actually it is real, but none of it is real.
That's amazing. Saleh sir, inshallah, maybe we'll have another session regarding the whole topic of dreams, hallucinations. There were a couple of more questions, and inshallah, maybe we could cover them in the next session. I think the entire session was insightful. Me and my fellow colleagues, as well as everyone else, I hope they learned a thing or two. Like, we can see how much of the work you have done regarding a small organ, and there's yet to be a lot of work. There's yet to be a lot of work remaining as well. So it is a vast topic, a vast amount of knowledge that we have not. We could not even comprehend what the brain is capable of. So it was really insightful. I think it was a fascinating idea to replicate brain memories and all of that into a single chip, and be able to help people like kids suffering from seizures, or helping people with prosthetic limbs. It was all really interesting. Thanks a lot, sir. Jazakallah khair कि आप आए and you accepted our invitation. And the session was led, I think, beautifully. And in fact, the whole you starting with the motivation as well. We really got the idea of how we should pursue with our ideas and our goals and achievements. And to everyone else, thank you. And I think that would be it, sir, if you want to end with any closing remarks.
Well, I think, I'm really grateful, and what a privilege and honor it is really to be able to talk to the brightest minds. You guys are the future. Don't sell yourself. Don't live anyone else's dreams. Your dreams are so unique that only you know what your dreams are. So, parents can tell you, become a doctor, don't do this, chase your dream. And remember that you can only go from good to great in the area that you're good at. But the thing is that you're good at too many things, and that causes the choice paralysis. You don't know which field to really pick. My advice to always you is that when you wake up in the morning, ask yourself what makes you come alive. What makes you really come alive? And ask the question that, this is what makes me come alive. Then just go and do it. You will never have any regrets. We are very proud of you, and may Allah bless you. Stay healthy, and also, don't sell your dreams to anyone else, or don't sell them cheap for sure. And really thank you, Mani, for conducting such a wonderful session. I'm your humble servant, so you don't have to thank me. It's my job and my duty. So, fi amanillah.